Welcome to Learning as I Grow 365, a storytelling adventure. Today I want to talk about my love for books and how I hoped to transmit that love to my children. So I can't really say this or that is the reason why I loved books. But what I can say is I knew I loved books because they expanded my world. And so, even as a young child, whenever I was reading, I wasn't just reading words, I was transported to whatever space and time and visuals were being curated by the books that I read. And then I lived in a house where we had a healthy flow of books because a lot of older cousins and uncles, and so because they had to get literature books or various textbooks, I had a healthy selection to choose from. And then I had an aunt who was an avid young adult romance reader. Then I had an uncle who had, some of those spicy magazines that probably an 8-year old shouldn't read. Um, but yes, so I had a wide array of reading material um, growing up. And for me, I think that space and that experience helped me to develop the capacity not just to live and react in the here and now, but also to exercise a healthy dose of optimism that some people may not um, be able to make sense of, and to dream, like, I mean, vivid dreams of where life can be and where life can take me. Um, and so that was a gift that I hoped that I could give my children. And so from the minute I knew I was going to be a parent, the collection of books um, targeting children started. And in hindsight, I was like, I mean, yes, you get the toddler or the age appropriate books, but I was reading any and everything that was available to me. Um, and so I would read with my daughter every night before she goes to bed. I tried to pause whenever she grabbed a book and wanted to read. And the funny thing is, I did not realize when my daughter developed the capacity to read. So yes, I mean we would read together. I would read a sentence and have her repeat words, etc. But I guess in my mind, she was not at an age where I should be testing her capacity for reading. And I remember her dad and I were driving her to preschool, and we were stuck in traffic. And I heard this kid reading the billboard. And I looked at her dad, and I'm like, hold on, um, what's happening here? And of course, being a true Jamaican, you have to make sure it's not a fluke, right? So I started pointing to other signs and was like, "Hey, what does that sign say? And what does that sign say?" And I'm sure, please as post. But that experience with my daughter actually reinforced my belief that, instead of focusing on assessing for skills, just engage with children in a way that they can enjoy and they can test out, and they're comfortable testing and making mistakes, um, and not feeling too much pressure. Some pressure is good at some point, because life will always have discomforts to throw at you. But as we interact, and not just from the parenting perspective, because not all of us want to be parents, but when we interact, particularly with children, how do we sort of create that environment that encourages and nurtures their curiosity, which will ultimately lead to the development of certain capacity versus making the interaction task oriented towards developing a set of skills or capacities? How do we do that? And different children will have different inclination towards different things. Because I remember I was in a parenting workshop, and we were talking about, culturally we're oriented towards academic pursuits, and assessment, and a lot of effort is put into that. And I recall for that group an experience I had where I had a younger cousin who reading was not his thing. If he had to do it under duress, under stress, yes. And so it meant that in terms of my academic standards, he wasn't the most competent. But when you put that young man into the garden, right? He can identify the different seedlings. When it came on to those hands-on things, he was your person. And so even that, yes, the story started out about love for reading and how I exposed my children to reading experiences. But the lesson is beyond developing the skill of reading. It is around how do we facilitate that kind of environment that allows children to grow into whatever capacities they have in a way that doesn't make them feel shame and embarrassment for not having other kinds of capacities, and also using the capacities they have to facilitate the development of other kinds of capacities, because it was through his love for plants and gardening, that I was able to connect with my cousin around reading. It started out with oral storytelling, and then, okay, that's a great story, write it down, etc. So, be flexible in your expectation and be very open minded, and make room for um, the child's personality to come through, and for them to kind of make sense of what they will be expending energy on. Um, and we do know that we're oriented towards, certainly in the early years of child and adolescent development, towards formal education and assessments. But we also have to make space for the organic and the informal, even as we seek. Because everyone, wants to see their child advancing. But the question is, by whose standards, whose merit are you giving more weight to? And is that in the best interest of your child or the children that you're interacting with?